Hey, what's up, Reefers? So I got my cute little sewing kit out, and the reason is that today we're gonna attach some frags, specifically Xenia frags. So I picked up these guys from a local YMS member, Leesman. Thank you so much. He just hooked me up with some Xenia. After hearing that, I want to give it a try again in my tank. And there are many methods of attaching or mounting soft corals, or Xenia specifically, to rubles. And today I am going to attempt the needle with fishing line method. Alright, so using my home ec skills that I acquired during middle school, I kind of threaded the fine fishing line through the needle and tied a knot at the end. It's kind of hard to see over the white sink. That's a miscalculation on my part. I should have done this over a black counter, but it is what it is. So we have the needle ready, and I have the live rock ruble ready. And the idea is to kind of puncture the Xenia at the stock and thread a couple of them through, and then tie it off to the live rock without being too rough. Because if I tie too tight, the line is going to cut the tissue and it's going to float right off. So let me go ahead and do that, and then I'll explain a little bit more in details, as well as go over some other methods of attaching or mounting Xenia frags to live rock rubles. Alright, so these guys are pretty small, so it may be a little challenging. Let me set the camera down and see if I can just kind of work in front of the camera. Okay, so I have my ruble here, and let me move the fishing line because we don't need that anymore. And here's the needle. Make sure I don't stab myself. Let's get one piece out. These are really small right now because obviously they're not happy. And you see, if you can see, they're kind of slimy, and the stock is pretty small. And basically the idea is to kind of thread the fishing line, actually push the needle through all the stalks to make sure I have a good hold. I don't want to do it too much at the bottom because it may just cut the tissue and float away. I'm going to go really slimy. And usually after this, right, my finger's gonna smell for a day. And I hate the smell because it does not wash off. And I feel like a coral killer because of the smell. And I want to make sure I puncture the stalks near the middle where it's thicker. Because if I get the edge, the tissue may just rip on the currents and the frag will just float away and disappear. Alright. So it's kind of hard to see right now, but I managed to get all three stalks, and now comes the job of pulling the strings through as well without ripping anything. So we'll see how that goes. Okay. Gentle. Okay, I think two went through. The last one is still kind of, it's sliming a lot now, so let me dip it in water a little bit, just kind of rinse it. Okay. And continue. There we go. Alright, so now as you can see, it is kind of on a string. It's sliming because obviously it's getting damaged, so it's not happy. But it is on. So let me get the other one on as well. And the Xenia is okay to be out of water for a little bit, so I'm not too worried because they're pretty hardy. And during low tides, they do expose to water. So let's take a look. If I remember right, this is also either 2 or 3 stalks. Looks like 2.5 stalks, and one of the stalk is big, the other 2 is pretty small. So this will be a little bit trickier, and I apologize. It's kind of hard to see This is a time when I wish I have a girlfriend or somebody who can help me film, right? Forever alone. But again, I want to try to hit the middle without poking myself. Actually, this stock is not quite separated, so I think if I just get one of them, maybe okay. So let's see what we got. Okay, so I can feel it went in. Now I just gotta push it through without poking myself. All right, there we go. Okay, so the needle's coming through. I wish you guys were watching this at 1080p, otherwise you probably just see a blur of stuff. You have no idea what's going on. All right, so see how it's going through. So let's bring it over carefully without ripping anything. Make sure the line is taut. And let's see if we can get this over the line without the tissue tearing. This is the tricky part. And of course, it would be great if you can do it to a larger frag. Oh, there we go. So it came through. All right, great. So now I just kind of make sure I don't slide off the end. So now they're kind of all together. I'm just gonna rinse it real quick, keep it in the water, wash my hand, tie off the other end. So I'm gonna cut the needle off, cut it free, and then tie a knot here. Because the needle's job is done. Thank you, needle. You've done great service. And funny because like I got this fishing line for when I was trying to catch a royal grama, maybe half a year ago or so. And I was at my wit's end. I was trying to fish for it. So I got the thinnest fishing line, which is this one. And I went fishing. But of course, it totally ignored me. So I decided to just kind of tear the whole tank down to catch that one fish, the royal grama, and I did get it that way. So, but ever since then, I do have these fishing line just hanging out. All right, so lines are pretty long, which is fine. I would just wrap it around the rock a couple more times, and I pick a rock. I'll try to maybe attach it in this little cave right here, so it does not get blown too much by the currents, and it can try to attach. And when attaching this, when mounting these frags, right, regardless of you use the fishing line method or there's other method like super glue or bridal veil, you want to try to at least try to get the foot or the portion where it's cut, like the bottom of the stock. You want to get that part to touch where you want it to mount. Of course, it's not always possible, but just try your best. So also the trick here is that I do not want to put it in a concave area where the foot is gonna like kind of like lift it off the rock. You want to make sure it has a solid contact. So that spot may not work. Let me see. Let me just kind of. Actually, that should be okay right here this way. Or oh, what if I go? Actually, that should be okay. I'll go this way. All right, let me just kind of tie it off and see how it looks, and we'll go from there. And remember to be a little gentle. You just want to hold it in place. Ideally, well, I mean, you kind of have to let the frag touch a rock, so attach, but you don't want to tie so tight that you cut the tissue where it separates. And then, you know, if you cut it, then it's done. Okay, as long as it's touching. And I'll go over other methods of mounting frags. This is a little bit more, this is more like a surgical method. And there are easier ways. But it just may not work as well in my tank, and I'll explain why. I'm slowly tightening a little bit. Okay, I think that looks good. That looks good. It's touching top portion, not quite in that concave area where I was afraid that it's gonna float up. So as long as there's a tissue touching, ideally to cut, then I think it should do all right. So let me just tighten it a little bit more and then knot it. And honestly, I'm not a huge fan of like mounting corals and stuff like that. I just feel like it's a pain, but sometimes you just got to do it. All right, so everything's still in one place. Still one piece. There should be like 5.5 stock in there, and I'm gonna drop it in the tank and show you guys how it looks. Alright guys, so here we are with the Xenia Frag back in the display tank, safely mounted on the ruble. Now they're really small because they have been savagely stabbed by me, so it'll take them a little bit to inflate again, but it should recover really quickly. As you can see, the fishing line is just kind of hanging out, which is slightly annoying. Ideally you want to cut it down a little bit so it's not rubbing up against other things, but so far it's not touching anything, so I'm just going to leave it be. And I mentioned there are multiple ways of mounting Xenia Frags. This is just one of the many ways. Another popular way, actually a couple popular ways, let's just run down the list. One way involves sticking a toothpick, a wooden toothpick through the Xenia, and then use a rubber band to secure the toothpick to the rock. So I was planning to go that route as well until I see how small the Xenia shrunk to, and it was just a little bit too tough to aim with a much larger diameter toothpick. So that's one way. Another popular way is using bridal veil or some kind of netting to kind of just wrap the Xenia Frag along with a rock. And after 4 or 5 days, it should attach to the rock naturally. Two other ways include more natural. One is if you have a bowl or some kind of container, you can put some like gravels, like little pebbles, rock, or even like rough coarse sand in the bowl first, and then lay the frag on top of it, and just keep the whole bowl in a low flow area. And over a couple days, the Xenia Frag should attach to some of the gravels, and in turn you can just kind of super glue the gravel to one of your rock structures. So that is a really nice way, and is really non-invasive. The only issue is that my tank's flow is relatively high right now, even the sump or refugium, so it's kind of tough, and I feel like I won't be able to keep the frag stable for it to attach. With a similar idea, sometimes people will just kind of like wedge the frag between rocks, and then depending on which rock the frag rolls on, you can just kind of razor it off the other one, and then let the Xenia spread that way. But again, the same issue is that the flow is a little bit too high in my tank. So look at all these fish begging for food. So the flow is a little bit too high in my tank, so I kind of struck the idea out. Another interesting way that I heard about mounting Xenia Frag involves getting a shot glass and then fill the bottom of the shot glass with rubles again, and just leave the frag inside the shot glass. And what happens is that the water currents, right, it's going to keep the frag inside the shot glass, so the frag is not coming out. And that way, the frag would just kind of attach to one of the ruble, and again, you can just super glue the ruble to another rock in the tank. Now, that method, if it works, it sounds really interesting, and I have not tried it yet, because I don't have any large enough ruble that I think would work. Or maybe these will work. So I have not tried it. So I just went with a try and true method of using a fishing line with needle and tie it off to a ruble rock. Now, one additional way that some people seem to have success with is just using super glue or super glue gel. You basically just pull the frag out, apply the super glue, and just kind of like press the frag against that rock. Again, the cut surface down first towards the rock, and just leave it there for like, you know, however many seconds it takes for the super glue to dry, and voila, that's it. But there seems to be like a mixed bag of results. Sometimes the Xenia with slime, like a lot of soft coral, so super glue may not work too well. Like you just slime and just slide off the rock. So I think out of all those methods, the most secure is probably, and the most natural is probably the bowl method or the shot glass method if it works. But that is assuming that you have an area in your tank that has a low enough flow, or you can construct something. For example, maybe you have a Tupperware container. You can punch a few holes at the top and just throw the frag in there with a bunch of ruble and just let it attach naturally. Now that may take a little bit longer, and then you run the risk of like the frag floating away. And for me,
For my purpose, I feel like the method that work with me is the bridle wrap, or some kind of netting to wrap it on top of against a ruble rock, or either using a toothpick or using a fishing line to secure the frag to a rock. Now, I'm not married, so I don't have bridal veil just laying around. I do have those netting for the mash top, so that could work, but I don't want to destroy that mash top or like the extra netting I have just for this purpose. So I went with the fishing line method first, and we'll see how it works. And I will update this video in a few days and see whether or not this mounting method worked. Alright guys, with that said, I'm gonna end this video right here, and I will talk to you guys later.